We had a fantastic article appear on page 1 of our local newspaper, which is called the Bloomington Herald-Times, which is owned by Gatehouse, which is now owned by Gannett as of, I believe it was last year. We've never seen a top of the fold page 1 story like this, and it was on a topic that I've recently written about, so I was extremely interested and wanted to share it with everyone. The headline is Feds, IU student, a Chinese operative. So great headline, really interesting photo, a huge story of great importance, really, because what are we talking about here? We're talking about a Big Ten university, Indiana University, in Little Bloomington, Indiana, and we actually have an FBI office here, believe it or not, and our FBI agents, I'm sure working with the Chicago office or maybe the Indianapolis office, have identified and arrested a Chinese spy, a PLA, People's Liberation Army, Chinese Communist Party spy, masquerading as an Indiana University student. So this is a fantastic story, and I was so happy to see it on the really in that the most prominent position at the top of the front page. And this was Saturday, no, it was Friday's paper, Friday, August 28th. I'm just going to go ahead and read some of it because it's behind a paywall, and gosh, everyone really needs to know what's going on. First it was BU, then it was somewhere on the West Coast, but now we're seeing this happening in the absolute middle of the country. Indiana is the crossroads of America. Yeah, we're loaded up with Chinese students here. According to the reporting that I did a couple of months ago, we've got 2,295 foreign students from China here at Indiana University, the main campus, which is in Bloomington and in the southern part of the state. For those of you who don't know, that is about 45 minutes southwest of Indianapolis, and it's about 4 hours south of Chicago. And if we want to state it a couple other ways, about 2 hours west of Cincinnati, Ohio. Middle of nowhere. Now, it's a great little town, but we've got a lot of big problems that need to be addressed, and this is one of them. So I'm going to read this story from the Herald-Times, Bloomington, Indiana. Feds IU student, a Chinese operative, by Laura Lane. FBI agents kept Indiana University doctoral student Zhao Kai under surveillance before his July 18th arrest, following him as he came and went from his apartment to the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing and Engineering. This is it's the big computing department here. They just had a huge reopening of this beautiful brand new building, very modern. They combine the School of Informatics, which used to be information technology or computer science, combine that with engineering, put it all in this big glassy new building. It was a big deal when it opened. It's named after a tech entrepreneur in California named Fred Luddy. So FBI agents are following this guy. In court documents, Special FBI agent Alex Plank alleges that the IU student from China lied on his 2018 F1 visa application to enter the United States and attend IU for a doctorate in informatics. When his visa was granted, Zhao, his family name, moved to Bloomington to study machine learning and artificial intelligence. But federal court documents allege, well, the documents don't allege, let's say our government is alleging in the documents that Zhao was less a student and more an agent of the Chinese military, which is very interesting. So what does this mean? Was he a student here? Well, he was enrolled, but he was really masquerading as a student. He was using student status as a cover for his work as an agent of the Chinese military. This is hard, I think, for Americans to understand. You know, if someone's a college student, I mean, you're a college student. You're not also a college student and a spy for a foreign nation. I mean, we take people in earnest, you know, and we take things at face value, and we're taken advantage of because of that. We just can't really wrap our minds around this level of duplicity, because we don't operate this way, but China does. So it's really time to wake up. So this is very interesting, and I think the articles really stated it well, but it you know, you really have to read it a few times to understand it. So then she goes on, she writes, Zhao has since been indicted for the visa violation and also for lying to federal investigators about his years of military service in China. Quote, probable cause exists to believe that Zhao was a member of the Chinese People's Liberation Army and made false statements concerning that military service to conceal the true nature and purpose of his educational pursuits in the United States. Zhao remains an active member of the PLA, unquote, says a motion filed by the U.S. Attorney for Indiana Southern District. Okay, he was an active member of the People's Liberation Army of China at the same time as he was enrolled here as a graduate student in informatics at IU. Now, why does any of this matter? Just hang with me here. Zhao is currently jailed on an order issued during a July 30th detention hearing before U.S. Federal Court Magistrate Doris Pryor. 5 days later, a federal grand jury indicted the IU PhD student on charges of alleged visa fraud and making a false statement to the government. He faces up to 20 years in prison and $500,000 in fines. IU spokesman Chuck Carney confirmed that Zhao is a PhD candidate in the School of Informatics. He is also listed in an IU directory as a temporary employee at Luddy Hall. Oh, great. Okay, so not only was he enrolled here as a graduate student, but we also employed this guy, a member of the Chinese military and a liar. Carney said the university cannot comment on pending criminal matters. Isn't that convenient? Judge Pryor agreed with the federal prosecutor in the case that Zhao should not be released and ruled that Zhao will remain jailed until his trial because of concerns that he might flee the country. Quote, in addition to an obvious interest in securing the return of a PLA officer, defendants' successful flight from the United States would bolster the People's Republic of China's information collection activities in the United States, while undermining the ability of the American criminal justice system to deter the illegal conduct of foreign governments in the United States. the prosecutor wrote. So what we're talking about is not just the actions of one man. We are talking about the illegal conduct of the Chinese Communist government in the United States and here in Bloomington. Wait, the best part's still coming up, so hang tight. Federal documents say that on the visa form, Zhao indicated he had never served in the military, when in fact he was a longtime member of the People's Liberation Army. The court file contains a photograph of Zhao wearing a PLA uniform. So he's in military uniform in this photograph. Investors claim Zhao gained entry to the United States to engage in scientific research based on intentionally false statements made under oath about his affiliation with the PRC military, People's Republic of China military. He operated clandestinely in the United States along with apparently several, if not more, of his colleagues. So he is part of a large group of Chinese Communist military officers who had gained entry into our country and were enrolled at numerous universities all around our country. Now, why were they here? Just because they wanted to learn about America and all of our freedoms? No. No. The criminal complaint in the case cites an April 2019 article that reported the Chinese Army's Naval Aeronautical and Astronautical University had sought a patent for military radar technology developed by several people, including Zhao, who by then had been doing research at IU for a year. Isn't that nice? Other Chinese doctoral students and researchers across the country have been charged in recent weeks with hiding their military connections when applying for educational visas. U.S. investigators say it's part of an intelligence gathering scheme aimed at obtaining the latest in scientific research coming out of American universities. Yes, these people are thieves. They are here to steal American ingenuity and everything that it has produced over the last many years at great cost, Tuition, fees, state support, federal grants, millions and millions and millions of dollars that our country has spent to develop technology, conduct research at universities. The Chinese just want to come and take it away because it is so much easier than starting from scratch and coming up with things on their own. It is always easier to steal someone else's stuff. We go on. Court documents in Zhao's case indicate that a team of FBI agents following him documented a 45-minute meeting at a Bloomington park on July 17th of this year, 2020, the day before his arrest. The meeting was between Zhao and two officials from Chicago's Chinese consulate, the Chinese consulate in Chicago. The FBI called the meeting significant because Zhao's visa application was one of several under scrutiny by the FBI. And by July 17th, a number of other PLA members had already been apprehended and or charged with visa fraud in other parts of the country, court documents reveal. Filings indicate that the consulate officials from the Chinese consulate in Chicago claimed that they drove 250 miles to Bloomington that day to deliver packages with face masks and disinfectant wipes to Chinese students. FBI agents searching Zhao's apartment the day of his arrest found his PPE supplies, personal protective equipment supplies, and noted that the bag and its contents would have easily fit in a standard mailing or shipping package. They did not need to drive 250 miles to bring Zhao some wipes and face masks. Also, we sell those in Bloomington, and they are plentiful and were in mid-July. There was no problem obtaining those here in Bloomington, Indiana. Going on. They also taped together torn up, this is the FBI agents, taped together torn up pieces of paper found in a trash can next to Zhao's bed and said it was a copy of Zhao's online visa application from 2018 and a map to the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. While being interrogated at Bloomington's FBI office, Zhao reportedly told agents he was from a poor family in a small rural community in China, which apparently was not the case. Quote, that background information is at odds with information gathered during the visa application process, where U.S. Embassy officials noted that Zhao's family was affluent and could afford to pay for the cost of Zhao's education at IU, a court filing said. Now, I know from reporting I did for the Indiana Policy Review that the cost of that education, according to IU estimates, that IU communicates to all potential foreign students, is that the cost of 1 year of education here at IU, that is 2 semesters, fall and spring, is $53,000. Now that includes out-of-state tuition and fees and food, miscellaneous, books, room and board, or rent. It doesn't include airfare, so a student from China would also have to include the cost of airfare. So 4 years of a college education for a Chinese student, you're talking about $110,000 or thereabouts. Probably more. For a PhD student, hard to say, because we don't know if he was offered grants or something like that. $53,000 would be the base amount. And they mentioned that his family was able to pay the full amount, the cost of Zhao's education. So yeah, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of 40 or 50,000 a year. During the interview, Zhao said he never served in the Chinese military and said a picture of him wearing the uniform of the People's Liberation Army was staged. Okay. Luckily, our FBI knows that Chinese communists lie. They like to lie, and they lie a lot. So our FBI did not fall for that. Zhao denied meeting with the Chinese consulate officials the previous day until agents confronted Zhao with the fact that the meeting had been observed by an FBI surveillance team, court records say. Zhao then explained that the officials had warned him the U.S. government might try to contact him because of his military background and the visa application. The FBI seized computers, tablets, and smartphones from Zhao's apartment and his workspace at IU's Luddy Hall. That's the Luddy School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering. I think that's the name. And they said it appears, the FBI said it appears all content from the WeChat application on his phone prior to July 11th had been erased, which is very interesting. WeChat is the Chinese app that I'm told all Chinese students use for everything. They use it to communicate with their friends here on campus and to communicate with people back in China. They use it to get all of their news. All of their news comes through WeChat. I was told that by Chinese Uyghurs here that Chinese students do not watch American TV when they're here in town. They do not access American news at all. All of their information comes from WeChat, which is a Chinese app, a Chinese super app, totally controlled by China. It's an app that's also used by China to spy on and control all Chinese students, well, all Chinese people, but including Chinese who are here in the United States. So this is very interesting. All content from the WeChat application on his phone prior to July 11th had been erased. So when do we think that got erased and how? I'm told by students that, I was told by a Chinese Uyghur that if he returns to China after having spent many years in the US studying, that his phone will be taken and everything on it will be downloaded by the Chinese Communist authorities, because you don't have a right to any of your own information. There is no such thing as free speech for communists. So it sounds as though he either did it himself or the two friends who came down from the Chinese consulate in Chicago wiped the phone, one or the other. I'm more likely to side with he did it himself. He was instructed to do it, and so he did it. It seems like that's something the FBI would have observed at the park in Bloomington when they had that meeting. It seems like they would have been able to see that if that was happening. And it doesn't sound like they did see it. It's not noted here. So moving on, the investigation is continuing, the story says. Quote, the defendants in these cases, the court record states, are operating in the U.S. with the knowledge and support of their government. Bradley Banks from the Indianapolis law firm Banks and Brower is representing Zhao and did not return a Thursday afternoon call requesting comment before this story's deadline. About 43,000 students, 2,000 or so from China, enrolled at IU's Bloomington campus in the fall of 2019. Of the more than 5,000 students from other countries in the class, about 40% were from China. Okay, I've got the real numbers. I know exactly how many Chinese students we have here because I'd requested it in a public records request and they had to give it to me. And so I'm going to just turn the camera around so that we can, if I can do that, I'm going to try to show it on here. So what we have is, these are top country of origin totals for the fall semester 2019 on the IU Bloomington campus. This is the flagship campus, the main campus of Indiana University. So a grand total of 43,260 students. That's undergrad and graduate students. Of those, 36,307 are Americans. 2,295 are from China, 5.3% of the total. Now we know that this did not used to be the case. It used to be that the biggest contingent of foreign students here at IU came from South Korea. That changed, and it changed right around the same time that we got a new president of the university, a man named Michael McRobbie, or Michael McRobbie. I guess it's Michael McRobbie. And what's interesting about Michael McRobbie is that he's not American. He is Australian, and he came here to Indiana University as a professor of informatics and has focused a lot on AI, artificial intelligence, which is something that Zhao is involved in while studying here. So we have kind of an interesting situation. Yes, a foreigner became the president of a major American university smack in the middle of our country, Big Ten University, Midwestern University, famous for basketball, great Russian Studies department, great business school, the Kelley School of Business. That's about it. That's what it's known for. It's known for corn, John Mellencamp, the Little 500 bike race, the Kelley School of Business, and basketball. Bobby Knight. Bobby Knight actually lives here about 2 miles down the road from where I'm sitting right now. I don't know what Bobby Knight would think about Chinese students on campus. He's a student of history. It would be interesting to talk to him about it. But Michael McRobbie has made, he just announced he's retiring, which most people knew already. He is retiring next year, and the university is searching for a new president. Meanwhile, no one's really looked at Michael McRobbie and what he's done here at IU. He's been very focused on China. He's made at least 8 trips to China, and these are not just, he grabs his briefcase and maybe invites his wife along and hops on a plane and goes to China. No, these are big expeditions, believe it or not. I mean, it's almost like a head of state traveling, leading a large delegation of people, staying in expensive hotels and going to multiple cities. These are really major, major trips. And on these trips, he's typically going to universities and meeting with people. He's helped form a lot of linkages between Indiana University and universities in China, which should be a whole nother huge discussion. Again, American naivete. What is the Chinese university? We think, oh, it's a university. A university is a university. They're the same the world over. No, they're not. They're not. In China, where there's no such thing as dissent. I mean, dissent gets you thrown into a prison camp, and you never see your family again. A university is not really a normal university at all. It's government controlled. There's only one way to think about things, and that's the CCP way. So this is very strange that we would want to have these major linkages with communist-controlled institutions, not real universities. No one has really looked closely at Michael McRobbie's real involvement here with China. Now, when I was working on my story for the Indiana Policy Review, I spoke with Chuck Carney, and I asked him if it was morally right for Indiana University to educate thousands of young communists here. Is it morally right to do that? And he wouldn't answer me directly. He said, well, I would put it this way. Indiana University's mission, from reaching well back into and then before, but certainly with Herman B. Wells, who was the longtime head of the university, was to bring Indiana to the world. And part of that is what Wells himself did. He was integral in World War II Europe and setting up the first free universities in Germany, blah, 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 blah. And it's our mission in part to try to instill what the values are of higher education in this country to people from all over the world. I asked, which values? What are we talking about here? And he listed free thinking, discussion of difficult topics, good, and allowing an open forum. and problem solving. Okay, all good things. Sounds good. And what I asked him though was, has it worked? Has it worked? And he said, well, you know, this is something that's ongoing. This is something that's ongoing. I'm not really a business person. I have had a business, but I like to try to think like a business person. And the business person wants to evaluate, you know, this was our plan. This is what we set out to do. And what have been the results? Has it worked? We've invested a lot in this. And what does the evidence show, right? In academia, and they like to talk a lot about evidence, you know, evidence-based. What's the evidence? What does the evidence show? Has it worked? Is there evidence that it's worked at all? Are there students from China who have renounced communism? They've come here to Bloomington and taken these deep breaths of freedom and liberation, and you know, they've just started skipping down the sidewalk and decided that they wanted to become a free people and go back to China and work for liberalization and stamp out communism. Has that happened? You know, are there any Chinese students who've come here and become dissidents? And he said, well, that's not how it works. So, it's not? Well, I mean, sometimes it does. But, you know, we have more than 300,000 Chinese students studying at American universities. If their exposure to American ideas about free speech and free inquiry were having any real effect, wouldn't we be seeing some evidence of it? We're not. There's no evidence. There's no evidence. For my story that I wrote for the Indiana Policy Review, I reached out to a gentleman who I've known for a few years named Charles Lee. He spent 3 years in a Chinese prison camp. He's a member of Falun Gong, which is this spiritual movement. It's kind of based on Buddhism, and they really prize clean living and authenticity, honesty, and maybe less overtly opposition to communism. That's what shaped out. I don't think that was part of the movement initially, but it is now, because communism is about lies, and Falun Gong is about people trying to live an authentic, healthful life. They also do the Qigong, the slow movements. You see people doing that in parks sometimes, the slow movement Qigong. So this is part of what Falun Gong believes in, the Qigong, and then it's also a whole mentality. And if you talk to the Falun Gong people, they're really interesting. They're very different from the Chinese communists. They're soulful, and they're earnest and honest and decent, kind people. Exactly the kinds of people who we'd love to have at IU from China. But the Falun Gong members don't make it here. They get thrown into prison for opposing the Chinese government. So they don't get visas to study abroad at American universities. So what he told me about the Chinese students in America was very interesting. And he studied at the University of Illinois for a little while. He was also at Harvard Medical School. I think he finished, but wasn't able to practice because he'd gone back to China and something got disrupted there. But he was at the University of Illinois for a few years, and there are even more Chinese students there. It's a huge number, and he said they have Chinese Communist Party meetings on campus, and they get away with it. No one says anything. In the United States of America, I guess if anyone said anything, they'd be called a McCarthyite. But come on, you know, got to get over that. What he said to me was, he said they hate this country. They're here among us, living among us, studying at American universities, but they hate this country. Those are his exact words. He said in China, they watch TV all the time. It's Communist Party TV. And the messages that come through the TV, it's not regular TV. It's all controlled. It's all propaganda. So they watch this from the time they're small. And there's no other media. There's not like an alternative TV. You know, on the internet, you know, everything that's contrary to the official Chinese Communist Party line is blocked. So they grow up and there's just one line of thinking that's pushed into their brains again and again. And it's America is imperialist, and China is rising up, and we're going to take over the United States. And he said, so that's their whole mentality, because that's what they've heard their whole lives, that America's this terrible place and it's imperialist and trying to keep China down, and China's rising up. So that's their whole mindset. So, and he also said that, you know, even if their mind was changed a little bit by their experience in the United States, that it wouldn't make any difference at all, because as soon as they go back to China, they can't do anything. Most of them, when they go back to China, they work within the communist system, because they want good jobs, and that's the only way to get them. So I'm going to wrap this up because I've been talking too long, but I want to mention, because it ties into it, that I ran for the Board of Trustees last year, the Board of Trustees of Indiana University, and this wasn't even my number one topic, but really I wanted to push for free speech. I wanted to push for better budgetary controls, much less spending on certain things, and a real return to excellence in education. We need to hire top scholars, not political activists, to teach classes here at IU. And bottom line, we need accountability. But this is very concerning, and I would like the board, and if I run again in the spring and am elected, I will definitely push the Board of Trustees to look at this issue of Chinese students enrolled at our university. Why are they here? To what end? To whose purpose? To whose benefit? We need to ask these questions. How is their presence here at IU benefiting the state of Indiana? I don't think it is. There was a time 30 years ago when I was a student here, there weren't a lot of Chinese. And I believe we were ranked about 33 nationally, among national universities in the U.S. News and World Report ranking. Now, with 2,295 students from China, bringing in $80 million a year in tuition and fees, an extraordinary amount, we're ranked the 70-something among national universities. Our ranking has fallen. There are fewer slots available for Americans. There are far fewer slots available here at the university for kids from Indiana. I'm not sure what the benefit is of having the Chinese here, especially considering that they hate us and they're under control of the Chinese communist regime. And there's no evidence that they really benefit by being exposed to American ideals of free speech, free inquiry, open forums, challenging difficult topics, speaking honestly about difficult topics. There's no evidence that it's working. It seems to be not working at all. And the danger is enormous. We've got the Luddy School of Informatics. We've also got big biology department, chemistry. There's a lot of fantastic research going on here at the university, a lot of it which is funded by the federal government. There's no reason that we should be bringing in Chinese graduate students who turn out to be PLA members, and allowing them access to what has been produced with American ingenuity at great expense and with a lot of hard work. I'd like to keep them out. And the ones that are here, I think that they should go back to China and finish their education there. So anyway, feel free to discuss in the comments, and I look forward to hearing from you. And I know there are a lot of people out there who have really specialized knowledge, and so would love to hear your views and information. And feel free to correct anything I've said. I'm open for the debate. Okay, thanks very much. Have a great night.